Yeah. And if you haven't gotten your opportunity tickets, you can creep over here quietly and get them. We're going to just get started. Our speaker is going to log on with us on the Zoom at 6:45. Let me tell you that in Ohio, at 6:45 here, it is 9:45 there. Okay, so that's why we're doing the speaker first. And then after the speaker, then we'll hold the election and we'll do all the other business we have to do. Okay. Okay, so first things off, now that I've got everybody in chairs, would you please stand up again? Okay, I'm going to lead it this time. I pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic and one nation under God. Okay, let me we'll go louder, but it will also help if people settle down. Right? Okay, thanks. Okay, can you hear me now? Yes. In the back, raise your hand if it's clear. All right, great. Okay. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Pepper. Did I misspell it? David. You have no idea how much I hate Dr. Pepper, by the way. And my dad was from the South, thought it was wonderful. We're driving across the country one day, and he got us hot Dr. Pepper out of a machine that wasn't full, and couldn't understand why these girls wouldn't want to drink it. Anyway, so David Pepper is the former chair of the Ohio Democratic Party. He ran for office 5 times and was elected twice. And that's also a message to those people who want to get elected. You got to do it more than once sometimes. Most recently as a on the Cincinnati City Council. What can I help you with, darling? Well, I tell you what, telling me is not going to help too much. That's why I didn't find it. And that kind of nice, folks. Let me see what's going on. It is plugged in. We'll see if that helps. Okay. He has a JD from Yale Law School. He teaches election and voting rights at the University of Cincinnati School of Law. And what I found the most interesting, which you guys on the program committee didn't tell me what, but I found it on the internet. He is the author of 3 books of fiction: The People's House, The Wingman, and The Voter File, which are all suspense, mystery, but in politics. Okay, and the Wall Street Journal described his work as one of the best political thriller writers on the scene. So, he's like a, somebody you would get a book to read while you snuggle up in bed. And then in 2021, he published Laboratories of Autocracy, a wake-up call from behind the lines. And if you flip your program around, I didn't tell him I was doing this, but I did. I copied this from Daily Kos. It shows the states in pink and red, where the state legislatures have a majority Republicans who are doing all these sort of underhanded things to suppress the vote. So hopefully we are going to have him log on here in a second. Okay, so while we're waiting, the other thing I want to tell you is that we are now recording the meeting. Jim, raise your hand. Jim has got the camera up here, and he's recording it, and then he and Rachel are going to figure out how to get it up on our YouTube channel, and then we will be able to let people know that it's not simulcast, because that is too much for me. At least I feel a little secure that if I really go off the rails, my daughter will edit that part out. You should have been here at 5:30 when I walked in, and they said you can't be in your room until 7. That's the first step in the things that you all said at those round tables and made suggestions. And then the next thing that's going to happen is the board in very early February has a retreat, and we're going to go through all those suggestions and talk about what committees will do what, and how to use those suggestions. So I just want you to know that we did pay attention to all that work you did last November. So thank you. Okay, let me see if we have a speaker. We do not. We do have Janet Henry, who's home recovering from hip surgery. So we can all send her our best wishes. And so we're just kind of punting until he comes on, which will be about 5 minutes, I hope. And yeah.
Are we going to be able to ask him questions?
Yes, but let me preface this by questions end in a question mark, and they are short. Okay. No speeches. Okay. Okay. So I know sometimes we want to make sure that the speaker gets information from us, but that's not really the purpose. The purpose here is to answer your questions, and we'll get to more questions. It's a little awkward because you're going to ask the question, I'm going to hear it. I'm going to repeat it so that he can hear it, okay? Because the sound he hears is what's coming on the sound on my computer, okay? So anyway, all right. And I was asked about masks. Wear them if you got them. I would feel more comfortable wearing it, but it's hard to use with the microphone. But I guarantee you, before I go to see my granddaughter tomorrow morning, I'm doing another one of those things up my nose. Not fun. So if you want to wear one, wear it. And how many of you have paid your dues for this year? Yay! Did you get through the door without the ladies kind of giving you the arm and twist? Yeah, okay. When we get to the election part, Anne is going to organize that and run it, but you have to be what's called a MIG, member in good standing, and that means your dues are paid for this year, and it means you're a Democrat. Our Republican members, I'm sorry, you're not a MIG. You have to have attended the last, at least 2 meetings in the last 6 months, which sounds really weird, right? The reason for that is there was a club, I think it was Irvine, where at the last minute, a whole bunch of people showed up who'd never been to a club meeting before, and they voted out the old board, took over the bank account, and shut them down. And so, yeah, so they, the Central Committee, Committee on Constitutions, suggested that we all add that thing about having attended 2 meetings in the last 6 months, so we wouldn't have a bunch of strangers coming in. Can you imagine? We'd be so thrilled to have young people, right? We'd probably give them a club. Anyway, so that's why that silly rule is there. There's a lot of stuff that they tell us to put in there because other clubs must misbehave, but we don't have any of that. Okay, anybody else want to say anything else while we're waiting?
Yeah,
Good.
Announce our.
This is Barbara Castillo.
Yeah, we have a new speaker committee this year. Herb Cohen is our chair, and Judy Curry, Marion Simon, Ted Pearl, and me, and Ellen are on the committee. And next month, our speaker is going to be Todd Harmonson. He's a senior editor of the Orange County Register. So all of those issues you may have for or against the register, it'll be a good time to come. So that's it.
Okay, thank you. And by the way, while we're waiting for him to show up, I know that the committees have been meeting. I know that the program committee met, and I know Field met, and I actually supposed to be on it, and I got bollocksed up and thought I was supposed to be on the Central Committee meeting, and I couldn't get on that one, which I was supposed to be on. Anyway, I didn't get there, so I missed a meeting. But the committees are meeting, they are working, so good for us. And the focus groups are meeting also. So I know the Mission Viejo focus group is meeting what, tomorrow? Or Thursday. And the chairs of the focus groups are getting together with Andy to talk about what the focus groups are doing tomorrow. So we didn't really take much of a break over the holiday. Okay, so we are now waiting for Ohio to come online.
Last call for raffle tickets.
Yeah, Gary? Yeah, well, stand up, we can't hear you.
All right, I'll make this real quick. Hi, yes, Ted? Oh, okay. I am here to encourage everyone to drink liberally. Now, what does that mean? Well, there is a national organization called Drinking Liberally. It was founded before 2008. They have chapters all over the place. And the idea behind these chapters is the thought that getting together in a social place is a nice, safe space for you to talk about politics. And so that's what we have here. I founded a chapter here in Rancho Santa Margarita. We meet every Thursday. The first Thursday is in person at Tudo Fresco, I think that's the name, right? And the rest of the Thursdays are online on a Zoom meeting. Now, if you'd like to join us, we'd love to have more people. Go to drinkingliberally.org. It's a real site. And look for the Rancho Santa Margarita chapter and put in your email address. That'll get automatically assigned, and I put out notifications every week so you know, and it includes the Zoom link for those days. And come join us. Come talk about politics. Half the time we do that, half the time it's just random other stuff. It's a good time. So I hope to see you there.
Yes, go ahead.
Real quick reminder, AWS in person.
Yes, there's a slide later in the meeting. Yeah. So, yeah. Well,
introduce the new members. Please, have you tried emailing him?
I'm getting ready to do that right now.
Exactly.
We know from now on that we need phone numbers for these guys. Okay.
We do the other business?
Yeah, we can start on the other business.
I can walk people through the minutes.
No, we should, the next thing is the election.
Okay.
Okay, if you are a member, you should have gotten a little yellow ballot. And Ann Owen is the chair of the committee. Okay, there's the slide on that.
All right, so the nominating committee consisting of myself, Kathy Palmer, and Sarah Burtnett, and put forth the slate of candidates, which you see on your ballot tonight. We have Chair Louise Adler, Vice Chair Janet Henry, Secretary Kathy Palmer, and Treasurer Ken Johnson. Does anyone wish to nominate someone for any of the offices listed from the floor? Okay, I'm assuming not. So in that case, could I please have a motion to approve the list of candidates as stated?
So moved.
Okay. All right, so that was Andy Alexander. A second?
Second.
Okay. Mike Schlesinger? Please raise your hand if you are voting for the slate that is listed on the ballot in front of you. Thank you. Please raise your hand if you are opposed to the slate that is in front of you. All right, the motion passes. And our new chair.
Okay, let's see if we've got a speaker yet. He has not logged on. Okay, we'll keep going.
Are we turning these in?
No, because you didn't have, the only reason to have a printed ballot is if there are other nominations. Okay, so otherwise you got to, you can turn it over and put it by your phone to make notes. Nothing goes to waste, right? So, yes.
Would it be appropriate for me to move the consent calendar?
Well, we're going to get to that in a minute. Okay. Yes, I will let you do that in just a minute. Okay. So the first thing that we normally would do, it's all kind of for blunder because of this craziness, is if there are people here tonight who have never been to a Canyon Dems meeting before, would you raise your hand? Oh, we've got a bunch of you. Okay. Would any of you like to stand up and tell us why you came? You got dragged by a friend? Someone, yes, go ahead.
Well, good afternoon, my name is Mike Connell, and I was invited to an event, and I actually helped at the last round, so I am here to take advantage.
Oh, it's great. And I owe you a phone call. Your card is on my inbox, and I keep putting stuff on top of it, and then I find it, and then I do something else. You know? Anybody else want to say hi? Yes, in the back?
Was the question if you were new to the meeting?
Yeah.
Okay, so my name is Dennis Bress. I'm from Newport Beach. I've heard of you guys. And congratulations on your hard work for Mike Levitt.
Yeah.
So Canyon Dems, first time to the meeting. I just joined to be a member.
Great.
I'm excited. I'm proud of what you guys have done. I'm a member of the Newport Beach Women's Democratic Club we have in Newport Beach. It's very Republican up in my part of town.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you're in Mission Viejo, so you should feel right at home.
Yeah. There we go. And we did our hard work and all the best that we could to get Katie Porter reelected. So one of my slate mates, I'm running for ADEM, is Ted. So I was very happy to come down and support my slate mate here for ADEM 72.
Okay.
So keep up the good work and go Democrats.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, we're going to do a thing on ADEMs here.
There you go. There you go.
Ah, there you are. Dave and Kevin, they're so happy to see you. They're sick of listening to me tap dance here. Can you say something so we can hear you?
I sure can.
Okay, just let me adjust this a little bit. Speaker view. Okay, take it. I've introduced you. I said all sorts of terrible things about you. And I told them about your fiction books, because I thought that was really very interesting. So go ahead.
Well, thank you. Can you tell me how many people we have back there? I feel like a pretty big crowd, I heard.
Yeah, we have just under 100 people.
Yeah, all right. In person. And you're all there in person?
Yes.
Okay. Give me 1 second. I'm sorry it was late. I thought it was starting a little bit later, but I am, I want to, is it okay if I share my screen? Am I able to do that?
Louise, make him a co-host,
Oh, sure.
so he can share his screen.
Yep. And by the way, I found a nice map on the back in Daily Cost that showed all of the states that are taken over by the red folks. And I put it on the back of our agenda. Okay, hold on. Participants. Let's see. Not letting me do it faster. That's not Just go back. Louise, it'll help you? Yes. There it is. There, I got it. It's just hard on this computer.
Okay, here we go. Okay, I think we have about 40 minutes, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to do kind of a shorter version, you'll be glad to know. And my guess is people have not read the book. This is a short summary of it, and I'll try and get to the point quite quickly and we have time for conversation.
It's hard of hearing, there are more seats up here.
Let me start out by sharing a hypothetical. Can everyone see this?
Yeah.
Okay. So what if we all saw another country, the government in another country, a party control, do all the following things at one time? They rigged legislative elections so that 99% of the results of those elections were guaranteed. And a minority could stay in power, even if it earned, again, a minority of the votes. What if we saw that party in power attack the independent operations of elections and vote counting to assert greater control over the outcome? What if they consistently attacked the means by which the voters of the opposition party voted, making it more difficult or impossible for those voters to vote the way they usually do? What if we saw that party in power attacked by law protesters who largely reflected the opposition party, made it criminal the way they protested? What if we saw them attack the independence of courts and change the way courts are selected so that they wouldn't have a check and balance on their own work? What if we saw them violate the elected will of their own electorate via referenda? They just didn't do what the voters voted to do through referenda. What if they violated their own constitutions repeatedly with no accountability? What if they changed the laws to protect themselves from being held accountable for corruption? What if they, and this one kind of gives it away, what if they cleansed history of their country of the elements that cast a bad light on what they were doing in the present? This does happen. We've seen this happen. And when we see it, it's happening in Hungary, it's happened in Russia to an extreme degree. And my belief is that when we see this happen in another country, knowing how democracies operate, when we see this happen elsewhere, we literally say, if we were to see all this happen, we would say to that country and those who listen to us, my God, you have a 5-alarm fire going on right now in your country. It's not just one attack on voters or something. You are seeing a 5-alarm fire, a broad-scale attack on the basics of a healthy democracy. We would see that clearly, and we call it out as that. And the reason I wrote this book that hopefully some of you heard about is that everything I've described isn't hypothetical and hungry. It's happening in America right now. It's been happening for a number of years. It started happening before Trump was elected. We are seeing in state houses across this country, not just one or two of these things, but all of these things happening in one time. But because we don't pay attention to state houses, and because we're sort of unreasonably overconfident that America's democracy is safe no matter what, we don't see this as an attack on our democracy in a way that would be so clear to us in other countries. And the reason I wrote my book is to try and wake people up to the reality that beyond January 6th, beyond Marjorie Taylor Greene, beyond Donald Trump, the most vicious attack on democracy is grounded at the state level, in state houses. And that's what's allowing everything else to happen that's so constantly frustrating. And it makes us feel like we're always only one election from losing our democracy. And one question we might ask ourselves is, if we only are one election from losing democracy, are we really in a democracy if that's the case? So I wrote this book, and I'm going to do a quick summary to call this out. And you'll see I have a little map here as well. It shifts sometimes. Thankfully, it shifted in a few states this last cycle. That the crisis in American democracy is, as James Carville would have said years ago, it's the state house is stupid. That's the heart of it. And everything we do going forward, if we want to protect democracy, has to keep that in mind. I want to go through real quickly why this is the case, and I'm not going to go through this in great detail, but why are states, and this is my thesis, why are states the perfect place to attack democracy? Well, for a variety of reasons, they turn out to be the Achilles heel of American governance, especially if in the wrong hands. One, states control every issue we care about. Often, but people don't know this, which makes this even worse, but from the economy to healthcare to education to energy policy, to what's taught in schools, to the biggest hot button issues of the day, a woman's right to choose, equality in other ways, the censoring of history, the funding of schools, climate change, all of this. The most directly involved government in doing these things is actually the state level government, while the Congress does very little. Number two, state houses, more than Congress, directly shape the democracy of this country. They write the election rules, who votes, when they vote, how much time do they have, can they vote early, can they use drop boxes, how many drop boxes, how do you register, how do you get knocked off the rolls? States write those rules, which in good states, well-run states like Washington State or Oregon, can be wonderfully inclusive. In terrible states that don't want everyone to vote, those rules can really undermine a diverse democracy. That's happening all over the country right now in states in the control of folks who don't value democracy. States also, as we've learned painfully, draw the district lines. They can shape a democracy through that power that is competitive and reflective of the government, of the people.
Recording in progress.
By the way, I'll share this PowerPoint if you want it also. But states can also, in the wrong hands, use that power to take all competition out of the system, to rig districts, as that first slide suggests. It keeps a certain party in power, even if they're the minority. They can draw districts that erase all accountability for people in power. So states have control over every issue we care about and control over the shaping of democracy. That's a heck of a 1-2 punch. States also, I won't go through all the details, state houses, and again, it's not just states, it's state houses. They also, in many states, have a real strength and power and leverage over other offices above them at the federal level and below them at the local level, and also statewide offices. Even though those other officials are better known, these state houses have levers of power that often allow them to run roughshod over those other levels of offices that are better known. My guess is watching Governor Newsom and others, that's not the case as much in California, but in states like Ohio and others, the state house too often runs the show. And that becomes very dangerous when they aren't known. to use that Spider-Man quote, if you heard it, with great power comes great responsibility. In these states, with great power generally comes great anonymity. These people are largely unknown. They're less known than members of Congress and mayors and governors, you name it. The dying of local media, especially, is making them more anonymous than ever. In many states, they're in faraway state capitals. No one knows what's going on in these state houses. And that makes the problem worse. They have all this power, but no one knows who the heck these people are. No one knows what they do, which, if you're trying to cause trouble, is wonderful. But if you actually care about a strong democracy, is a real problem. Now, here's the exception to that basic observation. In a lot of these states, in most of these states, certain interests know exactly what these state houses can do for them. Certain financial interests know that everything I've described is true. The far right, culture war groups, they know exactly what these states do. They're posted up in state houses all over this country, pushing bills, using groups like ALEC to send model bills, quote unquote model bills, while the people at home have no idea what these state houses do. The powers that be know exactly what they do, and they are now using state houses more than Congress to push through their right-wing agenda. So I'm going to warn you, what I'm going to talk about is a little bit dark. It's going to get progressively worse before it magically gets better, because everything I'm hoping I say helps shape how we should think about solving this problem. But what's worse, everything I just described actually got worse in 2011. The most intense gerrymandering we've ever seen took a problem with anonymous and unaccountable state houses and made them far worse. I won't go through all the details, but and this has gotten better in some states thanks to some reforms that are models for the future. But 2008 and 2012, Obama won all these states and others both times. But you'll see a dramatic difference in who runs the state house and who was the majority congressional caucus from each state in 8 and 12. And that's because in 2011, they gerrymandered these states terribly. So that they blew Ohio in 2012. Again, you all think of Ohio as red. Unfortunately, it's been that lately. In 2012, Ohio was blue. Obama won, Sheriff Brown won decisively. Look what happens. The gerrymander in 2011 took a 10-8 congressional Democratic caucus, and the same blue Ohio 4 years later became 12-4 the other way. The Ohio State House was 53-46 when Obama won in 2008. It went 60-39 the other way 4 years later. Michigan, thanks to reform, saved this last year, but they saw the same trend. Wisconsin is potentially the most gerrymandered state in the country, a state that was decisively blue in 2012. Look at the outcomes thanks to gerrymandering. So a problem of unaccountable state houses got even worse, and it really does look like that hypothetical I talked about in some of these states. The problem, though, and by the way, this continued even through 18. You saw that gerrymandering was so effective, and even in 18, you saw that the majority voters of the state were not reflected in their state houses. But the problem is worse than just lack of representation. It actually, and I go through this in the book in great detail, in Ohio and a lot of these other states, you have a situation where almost not a single member of these state houses is actually ever in a real election in their careers. They are, and I won't go through all the details, but they have about 62 seats in Ohio. Almost none of those members are ever in a close race. This chart walks through how all 62, basically, those districts over 10 years average double-digit margins. So you're basically creating systems of power with no accountability. As I go through the book in great detail, the incentives of service dramatically change once you have politicians who have no accountability back to the voters. When you're in a competitive district like I was when I was in office, you actually need to deliver good public outcomes to get reelected. You think about that. You want to deliver better results. That's how you get rewarded on election day. Once you're in a system, and this is what the Jim Jordans and all the others live within, once you're in a system where you're never in a competitive election, public outcomes no longer are connected to your career. And that creates a really screwed up incentive in these broken states where public outcomes don't matter for them and their careers. Much more important in their future is the second line, serving those private interests that are paying attention. If they don't like you, you might, lose office. If the public doesn't like you, you're fine. You're not going to suffer because your gerrymandered district guarantees you'll get reelected. Excuse me. Maybe I want to cough the last couple of days. Number three, you also no longer have an incentive to do things that are popular. In a competitive district, you better be for things that people generally like. Once you're in a district you cannot lose, that doesn't matter. In fact, you have an incentive to be extremist. Why? To avoid a primary. And that's why you see in states like Ohio, politicians pushing proposals like abortion bans, no exceptions, that are deeply unpopular. They know that they will not lose the general election, but they also know by pushing extreme measures, they avoid being primary by an extremist. So all these incentives get screwed up in this world without any competition, without any accountability. And one other incentive also becomes very clear in these systems and explains so much of what you're seeing around the country. Once you've committed yourself to a course of extreme outcomes that people don't agree with, extreme proposals, and poor public results, you know that if you ever faced a real democracy in a competitive district with a broad electorate, you'd lose. You wouldn't be able to defend your poor public outcomes, declining schools, failing infrastructure. You wouldn't be able to defend the fact that you pushed bills like abortion bans and sent a 10-year-old girl to Indiana when she was a rape victim because you wouldn't allow her to get the treatment in Ohio. You would lose. So you know that you have to keep subverting democracy going forward if you want to stay in power. And that's why you see a non-stop attack on democracy, because these people are all living in a world that they've made decisions that if they ever faced the voters in real democracy, they would not win, and they know it. I won't go through all the details, but as if all this isn't bad enough, it's been nationalized. You've all heard of ALEC. You've probably all heard of these other organizations, the Heritage Foundation. They didn't need to read my book to know all that I'm talking about. They figured out a generation ago that the single best place to get their policies, their deeply unpopular and their extremist policies imposed, wasn't through Congress, wasn't through the Senate, where Mitch McConnell understands that unpopular policies might lose Senate races. It's through rigged state houses. They figured out, ALEC did, and it does this sort of, it's nationalized and it's weaponized. The way to get all these really unpopular and extreme, but often profit-taking privatization policies passed is through state houses. And that's why they spend so much of their time, money, and effort getting gerrymandered state houses to do one thing after the next, while Congress does almost nothing, and the filibuster stops the most meaningful prevention of this stuff at the Senate level. So think about it as a laboratories of autocracy strategy on their end. That's what they're doing. I won't go through all the details, but they've learned over the last several decades, it all works. It's worked for them. They can push unpopular issues through. They're rewarded by pushing many of those issues all at once because the press is so weak and they can't cover it all. They've learned that even when they fail because there's no accountability, they can learn from their mistakes. They can, if one state succeeds, like Florida passed a Don't Say Gay bill, Ohio does it a month later. If another state fails because they made a mistake, the other states learn the lesson. They just keep going and going and going. But part and parcel is they do have to keep suppressing democracy. Without that element, the game would sort of stop on them. They have to keep democracy at bay to continue to push extremist and unpopular and largely policies that actually hurt public outcomes. 2021, therefore, should not, in all the attacks on voting rights and all the gerrymandering and all the election denialism, this was not a result of Trump, having the big lie about 2020. All this was an extension of years of this stuff at the state house level that people hadn't really noticed, but that's been building and building and building. And so let me just stop here and then get on to sort of the solutions. Essentially, I won't go through this in great detail. We have two battles for politics happening at one time in this country. The side on the left, and this is mostly Democrats in the media, we sort of view democracy as being intact and stable. we see ourselves as standing with the majority of voters on most issues, which actually polls reflect is correct. But the side on the left, Democrats for the most part, they basically view the political battle in this country as a battle over elections. They generally focus on federal elections in swing states and federal years. And when they win those federal elections in swing states and get the majorities, we celebrate like we won it all. Right? I mean, does that sound like the one side's battle? The side on the right's battle is very different. They understand that their views are generally unpopular. That's why Mitch McConnell tells Lindsey Graham not to talk about abortion. That's why he tells Rick Scott not to talk about Social Security privatization. The smart ones know that their views are unpopular. They know that on a repeated fair election, year for year, they would lose because their views are so toxic for the most part. But this side understands what something the side on the left doesn't understand. That democracy in this country isn't stable and intact automatically. That it can be subverted. It's not magically there. That's a very privileged sort of post-60s view that gee whiz, America is just a democracy no matter what. That's not history. That's not the world. That's not the real world. And they understand, as you see on the bottom, everything I just described in going into this, that the key to their battle, which is not a battle over election outcomes, it's a battle over democracy itself, to weaken it to a point where they can put a minority viewpoint into place over time in a sustained way. The key for them is state level politics. That's where you can get it done for all the reasons I just described. And because these two sides are fighting a different battle, here's the problem. The side on the left fights federal battles every 2 years, celebrates when it wins the House, the Senate, and the presidency. The side on the right is not, of course they want to win those races too, but they're battling in every state they can, not just swing states. Whenever there's an election, and when they get a hold of a state, they lock it down through gerrymandering, and they suppress the vote as much as they can, and they pass these extreme bills. But they do it in a way that nothing can be done about it because of all this unaccountability. And the question is, if these two sides keep doing what they're doing, who's going to win? The side on the right will win if they're playing this longer game, deeper game, state to state, locking in the state houses that shape democracy, while the other side just fights a federal game. I go through this slide because I hope it shapes for people the very, very clear things that we have to do to, and I'm going to go to a different thing real quick. Once you see that battle for what it is, and the two battles that I just described, my hope is, sorry, I'm going to get to this other slide in a second. My hope is, what it does is it makes very clear, hold on a second. It makes very clear what we have to do. Oh, sorry, let me go back. Oh, it makes very clear what we have to do. We have to see, like the other side sees, that we're not just in a battle over federal elections to get certain outcomes. We are in a battle for democracy itself, and that battle is shaped in states. Once you see that, I think things become very clear. My hope is, I'll go through this quickly, that once you see it, you also can't unsee it. Once you see it, you see, I go through 30 of these things in my book. That's far too many for any book, but also this presentation. I'm going to go through 5 good things. Once you see what a battle for democracy itself, my hope is you see that it's a long game. We are in the same struggle the suffragists were in, that John Lewis and civil rights heroes were in. It's not about just the next election. It's not even only about elections. It's about a long-term struggle for democracy. And while that's sobering to see, I hope it also ends up being inspiring, because you can see progress through thick and thin, in good years and bad, just like we saw last November. Let me give an example of this so it's clear. Stacey Abrams understood the battle for Georgia's democracy was a long battle. Now, I happen to have gone to school with Stacey in law school. By the way, Rob Bonta was also in law school with us, your Attorney General. I joked that Rob and Stacey clearly took classes at Yale Law School I didn't go to. But Stacey understood through thick and thin the battle for Georgia's democracy was a long game. And she played different roles along that long game. She did this for decades. And even when she didn't win the governor's race in 2018, she said to the country, we made progress. And my guess is a lot of people thought, well, that's just something people say when they don't win an election. What progress? You didn't win. She knew that more people registered in Georgia than ever before, more African American voters. She knew that more white voters voted for an African American woman in rural Georgia than ever before. She saw the progress, and 2 years later, we saw the result of her long game. Georgia saved this country when it came to the presidential and Senate elections. So we have to think about every strategy in terms of a long game for democracy. In this cycle by cycle, grow and then shrink and grow and then shrink. It's a losing strategy in a long game, as are many other strategies once you see it's a long game. Number two, once you see that you're a battle for democracy itself, you better adjust to see that this is a 50-state battle. Just because a state does not fall into the category of a swing state for federal purposes, we better be battling for democracy in all 50 states. This is a big adjustment, but we have to do it. Why and what's the right thing to do? The Constitution, if you read it closely, says that's what we should do. But if you don't battle in all 50 states, and only one side is playing that state level battle I talked about, not only do they win automatically, but extremism takes hold because only one side's even in the game. If we get in the game like Kansas last November, we can battle extremism and win, like with that abortion referendum, but we will only do that if we're actually in the battle. And so we've got to get out from only sort of micro-targeting a few states, because the cost, once you're in a long game mentality, the cost of not even trying to compete in more than half of the American states that are going through this downfall of against democracy and extremism, we pay an enormous price for that we can balance out if we get there. Same goes within states. In too many states like Ohio, we only compete in a few swing areas. And we leave the rest of that state to get mired in extremism and no democracy to speak of. And it's, again, in one cycle, it doesn't feel like that bad a thing, but over time, this is crushing ourselves by doing this for the same reason. You know, again, just to go through an example. Clinton won Missouri. Obama won Indiana. You wouldn't know it today. By not being involved in these places, we let them go further and further away from the mainstream, and all of a sudden they look like places they didn't look like 15, 20 years ago. That's also happening in districts and regions of states all over this country, and my guess is that includes California. Number four, this is so much bigger than Donald Trump. The attack on democracy began before Trump ever decided to run for office. We can make an enormous mistake when we bracket everything as either Trump or not Trump. I say this, I won't go through a lot of detail, there are a whole lot of Republicans who sound nothing like Donald Trump, but they're attacking democracy as fiercely as he is. And we let them off the hook when we make everything about Trump or not Trump. And lastly, my hope is, and you wouldn't be on this call waiting for some guy from Ohio who showed up late, if you didn't believe this, we have to, once you see we're in a battle for democracy itself, my hope is that we also challenge ourselves to see there's so much more we can do within our footprint of influence in this world than what we typically do when we only view it as politics about the next election. We can do more than just give some money to a few candidates, and we can do more than just volunteer in the final month of the campaign. The example I often give is when Sherrod Brown was Secretary of State of Ohio, he convinced McDonald's to put on every single tray in a McDonald's in this state a voter registration form. Or think about the BMV, how it asks every single person who comes through, are you registered? What are all the things that we do in life? Are we part of a homeless shelter or a food bank? Are we a volunteer, a board member? Do we give? Do we know the mayor of a city? All these institutions, everything we interact with every day, a resident board of an apartment building, all of them could be lifting democracy in all sorts of ways that they are not doing. And the reason I bring this up is the scale attacking democracy from that ALEC to governors and secretaries of state on the Republican side, the scale of the attack is enormous. It's big money. It's full time. And we too often are battling for democracy, part-time, volunteer, very little money. We have to figure out how to scale it up a lot bigger. And the way we're going to do that long-term is if many, many, many more people figure out in their own lives how they can fight for democracy more robustly than they have. And this is essentially what John Lewis and so many civil rights leaders were telling us all these years. They weren't talking just about their battle back in the day when they said freedom is not a state, it's not an enchanted garden, it's about continuous action. They were talking to us still today to do the same thing. So that's the basics of it. I'd love to open up your questions. I hope that was, I know that was a lot at once. It probably still went over 20 minutes, but I wanted to walk through the basics and then open it up. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate your time.
Okay, the first question comes from, go ahead.
Supreme Court. Apparently they refused to take up the issue of gerrymandering. My question to you is why?
Why did the Supreme Court refuse to take up the issue of gerrymandering?
The long story, but they have this, been about a 50-year battle, and I teach an election law at the law school here. By the way, one of the tragedies of Trump winning, and there are many tragedies from that, is a court that would have been 5 appointees if Hillary Clinton would have made the 5th, would have led to a court that would have struck down partisan gerrymandering. Yeah. There's a case, and if you're interested in this topic, it's from 2019, it's called Rucho v. Common Cause. And in that case, Justice Kagan wrote an incredible dissent to explain why the court should take up gerrymandering. And there were 4 votes for that dissent, including hers. And if Clinton had beaten Trump in 2016, that would have been the majority opinion. And all the gerrymandering, the most extreme views and versions of it, I think would have gone down in flames. But the court basically, just to explain the position of Roberts and the others, they take the position that that is a political question that is only for the politicians to solve and not for a court to solve. Now, here's the problem also, though, and this is why I'm so frustrated that due to a couple senators, we did not pass the voting rights bills in the Senate in the last session. An error I worry we will spend the rest of our lives regretting. The court did say, although we can't weigh in on gerrymandering, the Congress can. They can write rules to outlaw certain types of partisan gerrymandering. And the bill that passed the House that was sitting in the Senate would have done that. And to my eternal frustration, a couple senators would not allow, the filibuster to be overcome for that. And so we're stuck in a world where the only way in the short term that we're going to eliminate gerrymandering is one state at a time. Now, Michigan did it. They got better results. Arizona did it a few years ago. But in a lot of other states, it's far more difficult to enact that kind of reform. And so we're stuck with a system now where every state for themselves has to do it. That's leading to a kind of a what's it called? A race to the bottom. Well, New York gerrymanders, so Ohio gerrymanders. So a federal solution is best. A new court could do it if they wanted. In the meantime, let me just say, because I'm an optimist, every state should take up reform that can, and not all can. In the meantime, and this is the optimist in me, I wouldn't have written this book or be speaking every night if I weren't optimist. I hope that 24, given how outrageous Kevin McCarthy in the House is, gives us a unique opportunity to win the Senate and win back the House. And win all of us. We're going to Washington, and we're saying this time, the first thing you do, not the last, the first thing is you protect democracy in states through voting rights bills and anti-gerrymandering bills. Nothing else gets done until that happens. And that's the single best way. Win in 24, because McCarthy, I know you're all fond of your hometown guy, right? Shows the country how broken the Republican Party is. We win the majorities back in 24 if we can, not just presidential, but all levels. And we get ourselves in Washington and tell Joe Biden, Chuck Schumer, and all of us demand the first thing you do is protect democracy and then get to the other stuff later, which they did not do in the last 2 years, which was an enormous mistake.
Okay, another question. Fran?
Where the hell is the Democratic National Committee?
Where the hell is the Democratic National Committee?
I will preface it by saying Jamie Harrison He's a good friend. He was the former chair of the South Carolina Democratic Party, so he understands so much of this. He gets this, but this is about bigger than just the DNC. This needs to come from Joe Biden, Chuck Schumer. By the way, Kamala Harris, more than any other national official, after Roe went down, she started talking about state legislatures, which is the right thing to be talking about. Most other federal officials only talked about U.S. Senate and all that. And of course we want to win the Senate. But when the people that are attacking Roe are largely state houses, you better hold them accountable too. But there needs to be a collective decision at the very top that never again do we only focus on a few swing seats for federal purposes. And if the donors and the president and everyone else says that, Jamie Harrison will do it. But he's not the guy who's deciding all that big stuff. He's a voice in the room. He also gets it. I quote in my book about it. But it's got to be the collective whole, figuring out what the Koch brothers figured out 30 years ago, which is that it's the state houses that control so much of this. And just as an example of how that didn't happen, except for Kamala being exception, when the Dobbs decision came down, did you hear a bunch of federal officials saying, who the hell is passing these laws in states and how do we stop those people? No, they pivot back to the U.S. Senate. And, you know, my son's 8 years old. Before I got on this call, I was putting him to bed. That's one reason I was a little bit behind. He's an 8-year-old who plays soccer. He understands that the team that's always on offense is winning. The state houses are their offense. That's where they pass the worst bills. They get rid of Roe, they do these private bounty hunting laws like Texas, that undermine democracy, and for the most part, we let them do it. And we never oppose them there, and we hope and pray the Senate or a court stops it. We're always on defense. So we have to, going into 24, get on offense, which means run in all these states for state house, put real money into state house races, and run everywhere. And I'm writing a sequel about what we all should do because most of my book is too much about the problem. Do you know that the authors of the abortion bans that are deeply unpopular in Ohio, Mississippi, which led to Dobbs, and Texas, not one of them even had an opponent the next campaign. No one even ran against them. That's losing. If you understand that democracy and this extremism is basically all happening at the state level. So it has to start, it doesn't have to start, it has to start at the top, but it also starts with a collective grassroots saying, we're going to start, if we can give Amy McGrath $80 million to run for Kentucky senator, we can find the dollars and the energy to make sure we're funding candidates at the state house levels in all these states.
Yes, Ted, in the back.
You know, I saw your map, and would I be wrong in stating that many of these states are primarily rural? I know Ohio and Texas are not, but many of these states are primarily rural, and more than that, religiously evangelical.
So Ted is asking, are most of these states that are the red or leaning red mostly rural and mostly evangelical?
They have big rural parts. A lot of them, like Ohio, have a mix, or Missouri, where city and with large cities. But again, one thing, and there'll be some exceptions to this, but for the most part, the state houses are far more extreme than the states. That's why you saw a straight up and down vote on abortion in Kansas. Abortion won. The right of women to choose won. It won in Kentucky. These state houses are insulated. And by the way, who knows this? The politicians. That's why they gerrymander. They know that in a world of fair districts and competition, they could never be as extreme as they are in state office. So the very act that they're so intense about gerrymandering is to tell that they also know that they are too extreme for their own states. And gerrymandering, as I went to that one slide, is the way that they and the groups that support them, the extremist gun groups, the extremist anti-choice groups, they all know that they could not survive as extreme as they are in a real democracy. So sure, they're conservative. And by the way, in some of these states, if they weren't gerrymandered, they'd still have a Republican state house. But it wouldn't be crazy and extreme because even in Kansas and Kentucky, a straight up vote said they supported abortion access. In Ohio, it would lean a little red, but we wouldn't be legislating like Mississippi. We'd be looking like a moderate Republican state. So I think we make a big mistake, and I think this happens in Congress. I think one reason I think people do not focus on states enough from Congress is a lot of those senators are in blue states, and they assume that the people are as conservative as the legislation being passed.
Right.
And so they think there's nothing we can do about it. But that, as Kansas and Kentucky, and that's why you have to compete everywhere. If you competed everywhere, you'd actually disprove this myth that the people in these states are as conservative as the legislation coming out of these states.
Right. Yes.
What can blue members of Congress or we as Californians do about other state houses?
So what can us in California do about, and people in other blue states do about these other states? What can we do?
Okay, I have the best, you have 100 people in that room, right?
Yeah.
Which is, by the way, very impressive. In January, the year after election, you guys have a long game mentality. You do not have 100 people in that room.
I'm sorry.
Have you heard of something called the States Project?
No.
Yes.
Okay, you are the perfect candidates for this. So last year, I was on calls for 6 months with groups of 50 or 60 or 80 people, a lot of them in California and Washington State and New York, who had together adopted a state in this country that they would directly help the state house candidates. And do you want to know what states they helped? That they adopted? Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Nevada, the Minnesota Senate. Do you know where we flipped state houses totally against history? Michigan, Pennsylvania. This effort, and I can connect you to the organization. They are basically saying to groups, don't just give to that sexy Senate race that we're all thinking about some countries in some part of the country. Take money, take energy and volunteer time, and put it directly into certain state house seats. And I was on a call 6 months ago. Yeah, anyone of you watch the show Succession?
Yeah.
Well, Jerry, who plays the very fun, interesting general counsel of Waycross Media, J. Smith Cameron is the actress. She led one of these groups. And I was on a call with it was pretty fun, with the cast of Succession and her sister-in-law and all these people. And they adopted Pennsylvania. And they spent the next 6 months working to help about 15 or so candidates in Pennsylvania, state house candidates, where $10,000 or $20,000 makes an enormous difference that millions don't make a difference in a Senate race. And yet you all saw Pennsylvania flipped 12 seats to beat back a gerrymandered state house. So I would say of all the things that you could do, if you have a cohesive group of 60, 70, 80 people, I would strongly recommend joining together. I can connect you to the States Project, becoming a giving circle, and then you can choose which of the states that are out there that are kind of within striking distance. Arizona is only 1 seat away from being from being Democratic majority. Maybe you want to pick Arizona.
Yeah.
Other states you got to hold on to, but that's a great way for a group like yours to feel like protect democracy in California, obviously, and there's some house seats to win back there, but then also help win back one of these state houses somewhere in the country that we can win back.
How many of you in this room have ever gone to walk precincts in either Nevada or Arizona? Have ever gone to walk precincts in Arizona or Nevada to Las Vegas? Oh yeah, yeah. I'm surprised. I thought there'd be more.
How many hands went up?
3. One of them was
Yeah,
gone.
can I tell you, when I was the Ohio Democratic chair, I was all about political tourism. Because you don't want to tell everyone you're from that other state, you're knocking on doors, you don't have to. But everyone who comes to knock doors makes a difference. It's the single best way to get voters out. So one reason that one group picked Pennsylvania was not only to raise money, but Pennsylvania was close enough to them, they could go knock on doors, and many people did. So I'll send you an introduction to this group.
Great.
And they really make it easy to do what I'm talking about.
Super. One more question. Yes, Mike.
I went to school in Ohio. When I went to school in Ohio, it was Democratic.
Yeah, no, come, what's the question?
The question is, why did Ohio flip and become Republican?
Why did Ohio become Republican?
Well, one, everyone buy my book, because it walks through that. Ohio, you know, I'm not here to just point to the negative stuff. There are, I'm sure, could have been more dramatically positive candidates, could have run better campaigns, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But big picture, when Obama won Ohio in 2008, it was like this lightning bolt to Republicans. The diverse, and this happened around the country, so much of what's happened since was about the fear of the Obama coalition. A diverse coalition, especially African-American voters, showing in big numbers, young voters, and not just costing, to go back to that slide, not just costing them the White House, but the Ohio State House and Congress. And the minute in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, it freaked them out. I mean, we have a history, by the way, of backlash whenever there's a diverse democracy. It's called white supremacy. It's what led to Jim Crow. Well, that was also part of this. But the minute they had the chance in 2011 to suppress votes and gerrymander the House seats in Ohio, they did it. And I go through in the book how they decimated the diverse electorate of Cleveland and Columbus and Cincinnati and Dayton, how they chopped up districts, how they purged voters. Now they're going after early vote. Now they're adding voter ID. You add up all these effects, and they have successfully destroyed, it's still somewhat there, but the margins are such that they've made it so much harder to win Ohio if you're a Democrat. I was on a podcast with Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton, I told her this, she won Cuyahoga County, which is Cleveland, by a greater percentage of registered voters than Obama did. If you remember, Cuyahoga County, Obama was behind Romney after 87 counties. Ohio was 88. But Cuyahoga County in Cleveland was so decisively for Obama, he won Ohio by 80,000 votes. It's the most important county in Ohio. It's one of the most important in America. As I explained to Hillary Clinton, Madam Secretary, you won Cuyahoga County by a greater percentage of the registered voters than Obama did. But you lost it but you won it net voters by 50,000 votes fewer because they had gotten rid of so many registered voters in the meantime. They didn't move and they didn't die. They got knocked off the rolls. So there has been a decade-long attack, going back to that first hypothetical, on the voters that they knew cost them power, not just the White House, but the State House. And that's why you can still win Ohio. I think Sherrod Brown can win in 24, but it's much, much harder when going back to that question about rural versus urban, they have basically cut the legs out of so much of the electorate that cost them power in 08 and 12. Right. And it's been systematic. And the numbers, if you read the book, are brutal in terms of what an impact it's had. Voter ID, voter purging, gerrymandering, early vote, drop boxes, one after the other, have made it so much harder in a lot of these states.
Yeah. Okay, Barbara, we have a quick one. Go ahead. Why did Tim Ryan lose?
A lot of the reason for that, we did not see, you saw, we had not the worst midterm turnout, but our turnout here was more along the lines of a midterm. And, you know, the kind of like Georgia, the governor's race here, we lost by a lot, even more than Georgia. The governor candidate here was running against a moderate. Actually, he's not a moderate, but he was viewed as a moderate because he actually was responsible during COVID, which is the only memory anyone had of him, partly because he's sort of smart about hiding the more extreme stuff. So our governor candidate lost by the mid-20s. Tim Ryan lost by, I think, 7 or less. He dramatically overperformed the top of the ticket. if our governor candidate lost by 7, Tim would have won by something. So he overperformed by not by enough. But I will say the other thing about Ohio, going back to that decimation of the Obama coalition, there clearly was not enough emphasis on turning out our urban diverse voters in our cities. The numbers in that turnout were not nearly enough to get you a victory in a state like Ohio. They have to be, those numbers have to be of the level and energy of a presidential level race like Obama if you're going to win if you're Tim Ryan. So I think that there's some history that was working against Tim, a midterm win the White House. And if you're going to defeat that history, you need to have really electrified black voters in the state. And it's clear from the numbers that did not happen for a variety of reasons. And if you don't do that, you're not going to win, especially in the midterm.
Thank you. Let's give a nice.
My email, for anyone listening, I'll throw it out there, that's okay, is davidpepper4ohio@gmail.com. If you ever want me to present to another group, or just stay in touch with a question. I'm on Twitter. I warn you, I'm very active on Twitter, but if you want that, it's @DavidPepper. And I recently started a Substack that I keep pretty active on that updates people not only on the problems, but all the things that people can do. And so if you go to my Twitter page, you'll see a link to that as well.
Thank you very much. I mean, this was a very energizing and exciting meeting. I know you're interested. What time is it there?
It's 10:40.
Yeah, well, okay.
What's funny is it works better because my kids go to bed around 8:30, so the 7 o'clocks are what kill our family routine. This is actually much easier.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Okay. All right, let's see if I can get this thing back into control here. Okay, there are folks standing in the back. You can now come up to the front because some folks are leaving. The big event this month, we had the Martin Luther King Day yesterday. I want to recognize that. But this month, the big deal is the Chinese New Year, which will fall on January 22nd and is big in the Vietnamese community for the Tet and also for the Chinese and Japanese. So it's a fun thing. It's the year of the rabbit. Okay, so this is our, where'd it go? We left. Okay, this is our consent calendar. What we do is we get rid of a lot of our business quickly. So the items on your agenda that have the check marks, we will take them all up at one time. So if you want a discussion of any of those items that have check marks, you have to tell me now, and I will take it off of the consent list. Does anyone want to pull one of those items from the consent list? Okay, then I would entertain a motion to accept the consent calendar. Yes, Gary, who was the second? Ted, okay. So there's a motion and a second. If you're a MIG, please, all those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Okay, we just did all of it. Okay. Okay, this is our quick treasurer's report. We will be doing a much more involved review of last year at our February meeting. So we ended the year with $7,794.69. We tried very hard to give as much as we possibly could to candidates. And so that is the treasurer's report. Any questions on that?
Can't really see the bottom.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oops.
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe it won't work on this.
Yeah, I cut it off. Okay. I don't know why I didn't do that. Can you see? Yeah, I can see it.
Why don't you just read it?
Yeah, I just read you the balance. That's the only thing that you're missing is the balance. $7,794. Yes.
How do we do on the candidates we support?
In Mission, yeah, in Mission Viejo, we won one seat. Cynthia Vasquez in the south portion of Mission Viejo. She had two people running against her, two Republicans, Rath and Sass. Yeah.
City council members.
Yeah. I think even the city council was probably happy to see him go. Okay. We won 2 seats on the South Back Valley School Board. Barbara Schulman and Dan Walsh. And
Michelle Bell.
And we won Michelle Bell, yes, for judge. Somebody else was
Catherine Blake Spears.
And Catherine Blake, oh yes, Catherine Blake Spears.
Yes.
So we did very well, okay? And I'm already getting calls from potential candidates for, and Katrina Foley, yes. We are thinking of running for other offices coming up, so stay tuned. I believe within the next few days there's going to be announcements about who's running for the seat that Katie Porter, if she runs for Senate, who runs for her seat. So there's a monumental game of musical chairs happening.
Question.
Yes.
Can Katie stay in the office and run for senator?
No. She well, when she files for Senate, she can't run also for Congress, no.
Not run. She have to keep her seat.
No, her term will be up.
She just got the one.
But Congress runs every 2 years.
Right.
So she's running in 2024 for the Senate. She will finish her term in 2020, January of 2023. And if she wins, then she would join the Senate in 2024. But
and the Adam Schiff is
as I said, there's a giant game of musical chairs happening. Okay. Okay, so assuming that I was the chair, I prepared a list of the people that are going to be appointed as committee chairs. There's not a lot of change, but there's some. That's fine. I can see it here on my computer. It's just fine. The big change is the coordinator of focus groups, Andy Alexander, rather than political action, which was kind of vague. So Andy is taking over that, and everybody else is basically staying where they were. And then we're going to have the executive board retreat, as I told you, on the 4th of February. And then the committees will get to work implementing whatever changes we want to make that came out of the feedback, which was really great. Anne and her committee got folks together and they came up with a document that summarizes all of that. So we're going to be working on it. Okay, Anne, you want to talk about membership?
So you've been getting a few texts and emails encouraging you to renew your membership. And actually we're a little above that now. We have 269 members, and I think maybe 10 people renewed tonight. But we still have our membership basically has to renew for next year. So if you know of anybody who hasn't renewed, please twist their arm and tell them that even though it's not a election year, it's a building year, which is just as important because we need to build our coffers. So we have those bucks to spend in 2 years when it actually comes time to supporting candidates. Outreach. This month is the blood drive at Saddleback Hospital. Also next month too, you know. If it's February, it doesn't matter. They need your blood all the time, so it's very important. And you can make an appointment very easily, and just tell them that you're donating for Canyon Dems. It's a nice kind of media thing. If you want to take your picture while you're giving blood and put it on your Facebook page, it kind of just spreads the word what we're doing. Next month, we actually have 2 groups we're going to be donating to because they need similar items. And those two groups are I Support the Girls, which is an organization that basically gives hygiene products to young girls that are in shelters or abuse situations. The second is, I just found out about this, Silverado High School has a marketplace on Fridays, and students who are homeless or struggling can go to that marketplace and get food and hygiene products, etc. at the high school. So we're going to take our goods, you can double donate. We're going to take our goods and we're going to divide them between these 2 organizations for February. Okay. That's okay. I just want to go over the things over here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So we're kind of redoing our membership. This is, okay, that's it. So I'm going to yell. We're kind of redoing our committees a little. We're expanding because we want new people, we want jobs for them. So, we'll start with membership. We have a welcoming committee we're starting today. Patty Kozloff and Chris Off are out welcoming some of our new people. The idea is one of the things that you mentioned at the November meeting was people didn't feel welcome when they came to a meeting. They didn't know anybody, there was no follow-up. And so our goal is to try to meet people when they come in, give them a call or email after the meeting, say, how did you like the meeting, invite them to come back, to try to encourage this follow-through. Because I think that's kind of a hole that we're trying to fill. So if you're interested in working on that, that's wonderful. We're also going to form a phone tree. We're usually around, they haven't renewed yet. So we can use some people for the phone tree for that. The other 2 membership items, and I have this down here, is some outreach. I have one person working at Saddleback College, but if anybody wants to help Rachel with that, you can do that. I have one person reaching out to some LGBT groups, and if you're interested in helping Mary with that. I need some people that might want to reach out to the Dems Club, and this is a group that's got me snagging. How do you get young people, young being 50s, empty nesters, how do you get them to join? So if you've got any ideas, I think social media is a good way to kind of do this. So if you're a person that's on some of these, discussion groups, that's the one I'm really working for here. And then the welcome card is going to be taken care of. Field team also wants a lot of new members, okay? So, field team, they need people, we're kind of working up voter registration again, so if somebody would like to staff that or organize it, that's a big need they have. You can always use postcard writers. So if you want to write postcards or, drop them at people's doors, that's another need. Maybe over here. What they don't like. They're also going to be doing phone dating. Probably a little close to election time, but if you're a person that likes to, call people up and say, hi, preventing you to go out and vote, that's in this section. And then we're trying to also get some meet and greets going so that people in neighborhoods can invite people on their street who's a Democrat and invite them over, talk to them about issues, encourage them to join our club. So we need people to post that and to organize that. Obviously, we have meet and greets for candidates we have had. This is also meet and greets to encourage the Democrats to get together in your local little neighborhood and area and talk about issues. So, those are 4 things, and then I put one up over here for Jan and Henry too. She didn't tell me to, but I think it'd be nice if, we had somebody from each town, like Forest, RSM, Laguna Hills, and Mission Viejo, that would be interested in helping recruit from that town. Like, if you look like
I think that's the job of the focus groups in each town. That is.
Okay.
Yeah, that is the job of the focus groups in each town.
Okay, all right. Well, you know what?
But if you're interested, put your
If you
name
put
on.
your name up here, I'll give your name to the focus group person. Okay?
Thank you.
That.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, Marty.
No, Andy.
Andy.
Hey. No. I'm next.
On the agenda.
Well, I don't have the slides that way. Oh, but you can come up now and then I'll go back. Okay. Whatever you want.
Can the focus group leads come on up? Gary, back. Cindy, are you here? Yay.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, here you go. Just don't go too
Can I
far.
have some light, please? I left my hearing aids at home and I can't see very well either, and they're just falling apart. Good evening, everyone. How many of you here tonight are aware of the city focus groups? Oh, good. Very good. How many of you are in a city focus group? Ooh, a lot less. We need to change that. For those of you who are not familiar with the Canyon Dems focus groups, the club decided a couple of years back to create groups that focus specifically on our cities. Those within our club's jurisdiction, which are Laguna Hills, Mission Viejo, RSM, and Lake Forest, and the unincorporated areas. The purpose of these groups is to get to know your city council, be aware of what they are doing, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We saw all that at Mission Viejo, didn't we? Focus group members may be asked to participate in a call to action that could be an email to the council or possibly make a public comment at a meeting about some issues such as affordable housing, or participate in a city event. In Lake Forest, we have Clean Lake Forest event every year that brings friends and neighbors together, staff and council members all together. Get to know everyone. In the course of this participation, you may meet other like-minded folks, Democrats specifically, from your city who may be willing to run for office or serve on a city commission. Join our club and/or the focus group. Our city focus groups are a valuable tool to not only increase participation in city functions, but to keep you informed about what is happening in your city. We want to build a bench, folks. We need to build a bench. This is the way to do it. Please see me or your city council focus group representative at the end of the meeting if you would like to join the focus group in your city. I have over here Cindy Ashley. She's RSM. How many people are here that live in RSM? Are you in the focus group? Yeah.
Okay. This is Gary. He's the unincorporated areas. How many people are here from Coda de Casa or? Okay. Are you in the talk to Gary at the end of the meeting. Get your name on his list. We have Thack over here. Thack Skidmore. He's from Laguna Hills.
Fighting Laguna Hills. Anybody? Hey, we got 3. Wonderful.
And are you in the focus group?
Well, yes,
well, you need to join that. See him at the end of the meeting. And Kathy Palmer from Mission Viejo. Yay, yay. Okay, all right. Yeah, we have a strong group in Mission Viejo, and appreciate that. Appreciate you, Walt, for starting that group. And Kathy's gonna struggle to fill your shoes, I think, but she'll do fine. Anyway, that's it. And do you guys have anything you want to add? No? Okay. Thank you.
I got one.
Go ahead, Kathy. Kathy, come on over.
Okay, so if you're interested in observing a focus group and not making a huge commitment, the Mission Viejo focus group is meeting on Zoom this Thursday at 7. So if you're interested in being included in that invitation, please talk to me after the meeting or send me an email.
I'll need your email address and I will send you the information about how to join. But if it weren't for the Mission Viejo focus group, we would not have a Democrat sitting on the Mission Viejo City Council.
As far as the unincorporated areas, well, obviously we're unincorporated. We do not have a city council or mayors. So our focus will not be on that per se, and it can go in one of two directions. It could be down at the HOA level or up at the county level. And I think we probably prefer to go to the county level, talk about that, but that's something we can discuss as well.
Thank you very much. Okay. Fundraising. Okay, Marty. Thank you.
Happy New Year, King and Dems! It's a new year and we've got a whole lot of new stuff to do. This is not an election year, so you're not going to be distracted by all that cool election stuff you're doing. So we're going to try and engage you in raising a crap load of money because the year that comes next, we're hoping to have a campaign office because it'll be a presidential year and that takes a crap load of money. So I do want to report on how well we did last year. Thanks to all of you and your participation and your joining us. Our sustaining donors, which, do you all know what the sustaining donor program is? Okay, it's basically just if you've got a little extra to spend every month that you want to give to us, $5, $10, $100, whatever you feel is appropriate, you can sign up and be a sustaining donor, and that's just a little extra comes out every month on ActBlue. Last year, our sustaining donors raised a total of $13,882, which is really great. And when we add that to the proceeds of all of our events and our booth sales, we raised over $20,000 last year. So thank you. Give yourself a hand. Our first event for this year is going to be Love the Wine You're With, which is perfect for February, right? We have our friend of our club, and apparently Heather loves that wine that she's with right there. Oh my goodness. Hi there.
Cupid, don't let your bow. Go ahead. I want to take your time.
Anyway, we're going to have our first event. Our friend Jenny Golden is a sommelier, and she's bringing some amazing wines that she's been having laid down for a period of time, and now they are ready to go. And so we are the lucky people who are going to get to taste all of them. It's going to be on Sunday, February 12th at 2 to 4, and it's at a beautiful private home. When you sign up, which you can do right now because you all got your phone, when you sign up, you'll get the address. Okay, that's our first thing. We have a bunch of other stuff we're thinking about, so stay tuned. And now our opportunity to run. We have a couple of great looking baskets. What are we going to do first?
Well, since it's Valentine's Day, we'll do the bubbly for two.
Bubbly for two. Oh, I got 17 tickets. The lucky winner is 713449. 713449. Oh, yay!
I'm only 200 times.
My neighbors.
Joan and Brian buy every month, they get tickets every month.
Then our next basket is called, Melora?
It's a family movie night basket.
Family movie night. What a lovely way to spend a Valentine's Day with your friends and your kids. 713361. Yay! Yay!
There you go. Thank you. Thank you.
Does the wine go?
No, there's no wine.
It was an empty bottle. Oh my
Can you thank Barbara for everything?
Yes, I want to thank Barbara for being our ticket seller. She's been extraordinary, and now she's leaving us to go to another committee. So somebody came and stole her away from us. And I also want to really shout out to our comms team. They're the ones that come up with all these beautiful ticket ideas and all of the stuff that we send out to you to try and encourage you to come. Two of them, Cindy's here tonight, stand up please, and Allison is here. A million thanks to these ladies. They do a yeoman's job every day for our club, and we really appreciate them. Thank you.
Okay, moving along. Okay, so Ted and his friend from Newport Beach were anxious for you to know about ADEM elections. These are assembly district elections that are critically important in which registered Democrats vote for their representatives in the Democratic Party of California. These representatives vote on endorsements, party platform, and party's top leaders. And we are in the process of voting now. I've already mailed mine back. You could go to a meeting or you could vote by mail. So if you're interested in this, you can go on the California Democratic Party website, or you can call Ted and he'll explain it, or you can call, pardon? DPOC? The DPOC, or call Deborah Sternick. She knows all of this stuff, okay? So it's a little complicated, the voting process. I found it a little, it's better than having to go stand online and do it, but it wasn't real simple, okay? So it's very important though that if you signed up, that you do vote.
What
Ted?
website?
Anything else?
Website? I'm just gonna give the address.
It's adem.cadem.org, it's right there.
Exactly. If you're Massachusetts enough to go vote in person, 801 Narcissus Avenue, Oasis Senior Center, Corona Del Mar, Saturday from 10 to 2. Be there or be square.
Okay, so it's ADEM period CADEM.org.
And there'll be a little button that says ADEM on top of it. All you do is click that and it pulls you right in.
Right, okay. Okay, so please stay safe, stay healthy, stay engaged. Our next meeting, yes, sir.
I just want to make one comment for Dennis Press from Newport Beach. What a great informative meeting. The city focus groups, that's phenomenal. One thing Ted and I learned about is the Democratic Party of Orange County has a new app. This is so powerful. If you go onto the iPhone.
We've already have a delegation that has been up there to learn about it.
You guys know about it.
Yes.
So it gives you
yes.
the address and
yes.
your fellow Dems around
Yes,
here.
the field team is on it. Okay. Yes,
I'm sorry. I just want to remind everybody that I'm taking this anniversary rovers and they are having, as far as I know, a march on Long Beach starting next month. And I haven't been able to find one at Orange County, but
since we're doing little good and welfare things, I just got my notice from Planned Parenthood about the fundraising event that's coming up, and I know a lot of us go. If you're interested in joining in, we can get a table. Just let me know. Otherwise, I just pay for it and I go and I sit wherever I sit.
When and where is it?
You know, I didn't bring it, but I can go ahead, Fran.
It's Thursday, March 9th.
You want to come up and do it? Yeah, come on. Fran has worked for years on the Planned Parenthood board.
Yes, it's, and the guest speaker is Cecile Richard. So if you're interested, get your ticket sooner rather than later. It's, I think it's a Thursday, March 9th. I think it starts at 11:30 because she has to leave by 1 to catch a plane. And it's at the Hilton Costa Mesa.
on Bristol Street, I think it is. A lot of their events have been there. So yeah, sign up. Individual tickets are $150.
Fran's been working on that for how many years, Fran?
Too long.
And we also know Fran was on the screening committee to decide which candidates got money. And some of our endorsed candidates got money from Planned Parenthood. So we really appreciate that. Thank you very much. Okay, yes, in the back.
I was just gonna say, one more candidate for AB 72, for the Dems, sweet, happy Dutch.
Great.
Just putting it out there so you have a name recognition.
Okay, all right. Okay, so our next meeting is February 21st, and it's not Zoomed, so I'll be much calmer. We will be in that room. We will be in round tables, and I will be so chill. Okay, bye, everybody.